people have talked for a long time about equality, to be equal. White people can't be equal to black people because they can't produce melanin pigment. And that's the basis upon which they operate. You see, so again, platitudes and all of that's good. But it doesn't have anything to do with the reality, the specific reality that has caused a problem for people for 500 years plus. See, people are called white or you're non-white. That's on the census. That's the classification. You see, that is the problem. The word white, when it refers to human beings, means genetic deficiency, mutation, genetic deficiency, inability to produce melanin pigment. It means tiny minority on the planet. Do you see? There's no way around it. It's like an elephant being in a room. And everybody is walking around squeezed up against the wall. But they're not talking about the elephant because they are afraid to talk about the elephant. For whatever reasons. And so the problem is to talk about the elephant. When will the elephant be talked about? See, black people can be genocided. Native American people have been genocided. People can be genocided. See, that's what the young white people who get frustrated and they get a gun and they start shooting large numbers of people, because this is a message of the culture. You have a problem, you're upset about something, then go get your father's gun or your mother's gun and start killing a lot of people. Human life means nothing at this crisis point on this planet unless this specific problem is addressed.
Hello everyone, welcome once again to AfriPost. I hope wherever you're watching us from, you're having a great time. Now, many times blacks have been taught to feel inferior and systems have been created such that everything just points black people towards inferiority. However, this is not the case. This can be demonstrated by the Cress theory of color confrontation. It is a theory that was developed by Dr. Cress Welsing, a black American psychiatrist. And in the theory, she says that white people developed a sense of hostility and aggression towards people with darker skin because, first of all, is that white people felt a sense of inadequacy and color inferiority when confronted with people who had a greater capacity to produce color. This sense of inadequacy led to a feeling of hostility and aggression. White people used reaction formation to give negative attributes to darker skin. The theory also suggests that Western political economy models and institutions are shaped by anxieties about melanin deficiency. Now that is what Dr. Cress talked about in her theory. And here is an interview where she was at the Phil Donahue show giving facts about her theory. I want you to watch this, then let's come back and share our thoughts together.
You call racism white supremacy. To be sure, a provocative and controversial theory on skin color and oppression. Well, I'm ready. So is this mostly but not exclusively white audience. Let them have it, Doctor. How? Boy, oh boy, you need an escort to get out of your speeches?
No, now, let me just give you a little background. This paper was written approximately in 1969 and presented in 1970. It was written for a group of black psychiatrists who were looking at racism.
Yeah.
It was also written because as a psychiatrist and working in a hospital trying to treat black people and white people, but recognizing that the majority of the problems that black patients had in a psychiatric hospital, when you took a history, you would run smack into racism. Okay. So I knew I had to understand racism to help solve the mental health problems of black people. Okay. So out of my brain computer, putting in the question, why? Why do we see this behavior? Why have we seen it for hundreds of years? So I thought about these two things, basically two facts, that even though the white population says that people of color are minorities, that it is the white population that is the minority, the minority on the planet.
That's the reality you're saying.
That's the reality.
Yeah.
That in spite of the fact that black people, non-white people have heard over and over again, you're genetically inferior because you are non-white. That in reality, white skin is a genetic recessive status, not as said by Cress Welsing.
What is
you see? Meaning that if
meaning that if you and I were to have a baby, the baby would have color, and you make the contribution and I don't.
That white
so
plus
what,
colored, well, wait a minute. It's not Cress Welsing that is concerned about the disappearance of white. Ben Wattenberg just wrote a book, The Birth Dearth. There have been multiple articles in the newspaper talking about the decline of Western populations.
Yeah, here's the Washington Post, just to name one. We are a depopulation bomb, the withering of the Western world. Here, incidentally, this was the percentage of the West's population in 1900, the turn of this century, about 30%. This is where we'll be less than 10% in the year 2075. Here's where we are about today, 15. So we're not having babies.
So whites are not having babies, and there is the concern about white genetic annihilation. In other words, I look at, this is Dr. Martin Luther King's birthday holiday, and people will say, well, here's a man who talked about love. Yeah. Why was he killed? And I say that the deeper logic is, what if all black and white people and non-white people and white people love? What would happen to white people? White would disappear. You see, just mix all of the people on the planet up together.
In other words, if race didn't matter, or if color didn't matter, it follows with the jet planes.
No, I'm not saying if it didn't matter. I'm saying that indeed if there was a mingling of all of the people, because
that's what I'm saying.
Okay, fine.
Absence of prejudice.
The ability, no, wait, don't confuse what I'm saying. I'm saying that if we mixed all of the people presently on the planet, stirred them up,
the white freckle-faced people would be gone.
Genetic recessive status would disappear. And that if I did a survey and everybody didn't have to, you know, face anybody, if I said how many people who are white want their children to be white, want their grandchildren to be white, want their great-grandchildren to be white, want their great-great-grandchildren to be white. And I've gone all over the country in England and asked this question. Yeah. Everybody wants the children and the generations to remain white. Yeah. If you do, then you have to do something to make sure that that happens. And I say that what the thing is that is done, and particularly in relationship to black non-whites, because we have the greatest genetic potential to cause white genetic annihilation.
Because you're the blackest.
Because we, right.
The most color.
Right. We have this ability to produce melanin pigment. We have more of it than anybody else. And so the most pressure is on black people. As a matter of fact, the black people learn, all non-white people over the world learn. If you're black, stay back. If you're yellow, you're brown, stick around. If you're yellow, mellow, white, right. I can go to England and the people can just say the same thing. Doesn't matter whether, if you go to the Philippines, because there has been a confrontation of brown with white. Everybody knows the more pigment you have, the more pressure that is on you. Yeah. But they didn't understand why. I said the why is for the purpose of white genetic survival.
All right. And you're saying that blacks have no similar hidden, subconscious anxiety about their blackness being undermined by the presence of white?
We don't have that fear. And I think that this is something that is not understood. You see, in other words, if I don't worry about, as a matter of fact, under white supremacy, the non-white people try to get lighter. You see, because the less pigment you have,
co-opting the values
less threat you are to white, and so the greater opportunity that you have.
Yeah. The mass inability of whites to live and attend school in the presence of non-whites, manifested by the patterns of black and white housing and education throughout this country, and indeed throughout the world, is seen, according to your thesis, in terms of the color confrontation thesis, as the apparent total psychological discomfort experienced by whites in situations in which they must daily face their color inadequacy when they confront their neighbors of color. You go on.
I predicted. Look, I wrote that in 1970. I said you cannot have integrated housing. You cannot have integrated schools.
You still believe that?
Well, I mean, the evidence. I always look at the evidence. If Mr. Black and Mr. White live next door to each other, They have the same job, the same income, the same car, the same furniture.
Yeah.
They both walk out of the house in the morning. Good morning, Mr. Black. Good morning, Mr. White.
Yeah.
But Mr. White is still looking, but you've got something that I don't have.
You're saying he's saying that
He's
subconsciously.
saying, right.
Now, wait a minute. All right, we'll give you a chance in just a moment.
Wait a minute.
Now, wait a minute.
Let's look at
They're
this.
nice people. You're really going to
Wonderful
like them, I
people.
promise you. You know,
Let's
once
look
in
at
a
this.
while, you know, a couple of them stop before they come up here, and you got
But
to keep an eye on them.
let's look at this. You
You
know,
like, go ahead, look at it.
very fortunately.
Now, let me just understand this. See, the reason they're groaning is, you know, that's an awful bad rap to take. Let me just arrogantly try and reword what I think you're saying. Now, don't get crazy. Let me say.
Please, I'm a
Mr.
psychiatrist.
White is looking at Mr. Black, and he's not consciously saying, don't you dare.
Not consciously.
So it is under here.
Not consciously. I mean, we could go on for 3 hours. Not
No, we can't.
consciously.
All right. All right.
Okay. I am saying that this behavior is at the subconscious level, and there's a lot of evidence. For example, just on Saturday, the New York Times had an article talking about the percentage of people who want a tan. 66%. I have the article if anybody wants to look at it later. 66% of white adults think they look better with a tan. 70% of white adolescents think they look better with a tan. What do white people? Ooh, I look so pale. Now, this is not something that Cress Welsing is putting on people. White females even say their ideal mate is who? Tall, dark, and handsome. Now, Phil, I mean...
Wait a minute. Just a minute. That whites do indeed desire to have colored skin can be seen by anyone at the very first signs of spring or summer, when they begin to strip off their clothes as many pieces as the law will allow, often permitting their skins to be burned severely in an attempt to add some color to their white, pale, colorless bodies, rendering themselves vulnerable to the dreaded skin cancer in the process. Most cosmetics also are seen as an attempt to add color to their skins. Such coloring makeup is even now being provided for the white male. Well, guess who has you-know-what on at this moment? And if you don't mind my saying so, I do. I put it on myself. I don't go to makeup. I have a shine on my nose I've got to take. But I feel better with a little color. And I've got the whitest skin in the whole neighborhood. I'm telling you, no kidding. I'm not bragging. I'm saying as a matter of fact.
This is not, my discussion is not about making fun of white people. My discussion is trying to explain behavior. People come to psychiatrists
I value
and say,
your effort here.
Why am I doing this? For example, when I was a very small child, I wanted to understand why black men were lynched. I asked my grandmother and parents, why would this be done? And my grandmother gave a statement. She said something like, well, some people just want to act ugly. But that wasn't sufficient, you know, as a psychiatrist.
May I interrupt for just a moment? Here's the read on that, and I know you want to add to this or make it just a little more complicated. The black male was lynched and often castrated because of the white male fear of the black male's, the myth is the black male's extraordinary sexual capacity. So he was lynched by frightened white males who feared that if he ever got anywhere near the white women, that somehow the white male would be a Now,
well,
you want to add
now,
to that.
his sexual capacity, what are we talking about? I say that the fear is that the black male can cause white genetic annihilation. And this is why the attack on the genitals, there's no history in the world of any non-white men attacking white men's genitals. But why do white men feel the need to zero in on the black man's genitals and cut them off?
Yeah.
Do you see? And a lot of this is played out in symbolic behavior in this culture. For example, the culture says, keep your eye on the ball.
Yeah.
Now, wait a minute. Look at something that,
I'll get there to just 1 second.
See, look at something that people do not look at. Look at the game of billiards. See, the psychiatrist knows that through games we play out
Subconscious,
activity.
Yes, they do.
Okay, now look at this game. Here's a game with colored balls.
Yes.
All over the table.
And guess who gets to shoot the ball?
The white ball knocks all the colored balls under the table.
And often saves the black one.
And then the black ball, right.
Till last.
Till last.
Because there's a specialness about the black. Yeah. Let me, Dr. Welsing, let me, now, you're not surprised at the response of this audience. Just a couple of things here for the sake of our conversation. First of all, we welcome your contribution. That is, for what it's worth, I certainly do. Which does not mean, therefore, that I or this audience necessarily agree with everything you say. But let me tell you what I think is important. I don't think we've asked enough questions about this thing called racism, which has, in my opinion, the capacity to bring us down as a nation, if not, certainly not only here, but in many parts of the world. It is in the American bloodstream, and it's especially manifest here. So good for you trying to figure this out, because it's my, no kidding, it's my opinion, not enough smart people are really speaking to the, we run away from this. Another point you make, you think this, the token black is an effort to assuage this hidden feeling that we have? Is that, how do you explain?
Well, the token black, I mean, you might say that was under pressure. Do you see that you have to, the civil rights movement, you have to include some non-white people. But every effort is made to move around that. Mm-hmm. And I understand, I mean, it's tragic. Mm-hmm. And it's injustice. Yeah. And I'm not just saying here, I'm saying all over this planet, whether we're talking about South Africa. And see, one important example that people do a lot of surface talking about is the Holocaust. See how quiet it is? The Holocaust in Germany was because what? Because the Semites of the Jewish religion were said by the Europeans to be non-white people. The Holocaust didn't just occur.
So you think that there's
Wait a minute. Do you see what I'm saying? If we have denial going on about this, all you have to do is look at what the Nazis are saying today. What the Klan is saying today.
So you're saying anti-Semitism has the same root?
If you read Hitler, if you read all the documentation...
Anti-Semitism has pigmentation as it's under the...
Had to do with the Semites. Look at the part of the world that the Semites come out of. I say that the word Semite comes from the Latin prefix semi, meaning half. Yeah. It's a word like mulatto. It means a combination of black African women, Greek and Roman soldiers, and you had that mixture. 2,000 years of continuing mixture in Europe made a lighter group of people.
Okay, can I just...
that were still considered to be non-white.
When you use lighter and, you say recessive, and you use the word recessive gene, I think I know what that means.
This is not my language. This is the language of formal genetics.
That's true. But you equate recessive with inferior. Now, just hang on one second.
Go ahead.
I don't claim to be the first one to bring this to your attention, but aren't you dangerously close to Joseph Mengele with all this stuff?
No.
How about Shockley?
No. Wait a minute. No. What I am trying to do is explain some very, very important behavior on the planet that other people have shied away from dealing with. Yeah. Do you see? And to say that because you talk about it, it's just like if somebody studied tuberculosis and say, well, are you against the tuberculosis organism? No, you're trying to understand
Well, but you do bring judgments on me. So when you equate recessive with inferior, that's not science, that's judgment.
No, I'm not, that's not what I say. I say that the people who are feeling an absence of color, that they look at themselves in that way. And they have a response to therefore say, if I can get in charge of all these non-white people, then I am going to be superior. So nobody is uncomfortable in the white collective with all the white superiority that goes on every day. Look at television. White. Wait a minute.
All right, I got it. Hold on a minute. Look at, all right, hang on just 1 second.
Oh, my goodness.
Hold 1 second. There are a couple of things which you, listen, there are people out there who say, look at all the progress we're making.
But look at the Urban League report.
I am not one of those people.
Fine.
Nevertheless, there are examples of integrated communities. truly are.
But see, the answer is not a question of are there a few black people living where white people live. The issue is that if we are going to have peace on the planet, there has to be justice. And white supremacy, where you have the tiniest number of people on the planet holding down the vast majority of people on the planet, happens to be the highest form of injustice.
Yeah.
And so if we are going to have peace, see, I'm not talking about destroy white people, I'm saying, but we do have to eliminate white supremacy. And I say in the back of that paper, the challenge to white behavioral scientists, help people who classify themselves as white become comfortable with their color and comfortable with their minority status, so that they are not feeling negative and then mistreating all of the people that they say are, what, non-white.
Are you there, caller? Go ahead.
Yes, I'm here, Phil. Hi. First of all, I'd like to say that I'm white. I can't believe that she's saying that the white people would like to be, I'm assuming she's saying black, not of a darker skin color, but black. I myself am very, very fair-skinned, brunette with green eyes, and I have no desire to be dark.
Why?
Why? I like my color. I was attractive enough that I went to modeling school. I do admit that I do use blush. I do not use blush to, as you say, give myself color. I use it to accent my cheekbones, give myself better appearance.
Do you sunbathe?
No, I don't. And as a matter of fact, I love the beach, and my husband and I, when we've gone to the Bahamas a few times, when we have, I have to wear sunscreen. You know, I don't turn tan.
Okay.
I get red.
Right.
And I grew up on the beach, and I had a minimal tan. But
You see, but I'm asking,
Well, hang on one second.
I want to be clear. Is she saying I want to be dark, but I don't want to be black?
Yes.
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 And
So you'd
I
like
would
to be a
also-
little darker than you are?
No, I wouldn't say so. I'm very pleased with my color.
Well, then why do you put rouge on?
To accent my cheekbones.
Highlight the cheekbones.
But why do you suntan? Because the American Dermatological Society would
She
prefer...
doesn't, probably for that reason.
But she goes to the beach.
She does go to the
I
beach.
go to the beach because I like the water.
I gotta go.
I
All right.
like the water. I grew up in California.
Let me try one more. Are you there, caller? Go ahead.
Hi. I'm also white, and I'm very comfortable with being white. I think that she's crazy to think that white people want to be black. You know, we might want to have a little color, but I wouldn't want the features of a black person. And as far as...
The what? What's she
She
saying?
does not want the features of a black person. Do you see, this is...
Hold on a minute.
Wait a minute.
Yeah, in other words, that's racism, but pigmentation isn't?
Well, no, I'm saying that to say I wouldn't want to be, I mean, I can be happy who I am and not say something is negative about the other person.
Well, look, we've got a break here. Is there a, you know, one of the agonies here is half of this audience does not believe that they're racist.
Oh, wait, well, let me...
I am not more than half.
Let me ask this.
You can't fix it if you don't know you have it.
But wait a minute, I want to ask...
How do you explain what's going on here in this country?
I want to say then, who is? That's like going to Germany. I went to Germany in 1957. And I wanted to live with German people and ask them, did they understand what they were doing?
Yeah.
You know, taking their neighbors away and burning them up. Did they understand what was happening? Yeah. Everybody that I talked to knew what was going on. They did nothing. But if you go and say, well, now, who believed what Hitler was saying? Nobody. Everybody says no. You see, every single person says, no,
so
I didn't have anything to do with it.
The people who are saying they're not racist, you're accusing them not doing it.
No, I'm not accusing. What I would do is, if you have to take a break, is give my definition. You see, give my definition of what I say that racism is.
A functional definition of racism, white supremacy, which you identify with white supremacy, is therefore, for all practical purpose, as follows. The behavioral syndrome of individual and collective color inferiority and numerical inadequacy, which includes patterns of thought, speech, and action as seen in members of the white organization or race. And we'll be back in just a moment. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I think people are racism. Okay, there is a lot of people who do have that in them, but I think the majority of the people like people as they are. And if you're educated...
You mean you like your kind, you mean?
No, all kinds of people. It doesn't have to be your kind,
Right.
because
So, do you
I
feel
can look
you
at a
have
person...
any of it? This thing we call racism?
No, because I live in Colonia, and we have a whole development of black people, okay? And, well, wait, no, I went to school with them, okay? And I learned to deal with them. I think that if you learn to...
Them.
Well, we mixed as a group. In other words, we weren't different. We weren't treated different. We weren't treated different, so we were all one kind of
Hold
person.
your thought. You hang on a minute. Go on. What's the matter? What?
This study that was done in 69 and 70, I'd like to know what she's done lately to erase and eradicate racism
Do you
and
have
to
any?
improve
How do you
situations.
feel about what she's saying?
I don't care for it at all.
I want to just say that I feel I am a racist, but every black that calls Whitey a Whitey is also a racist. And I...
Wait a minute. Let me answer that. You see, within a family, people might call each other names. But when we come to the white people on the planet, the majority having organized themselves for white genetic survival, then when a white person can determine what is going to happen to a person of color, that is a difference, because then we're talking about a system of power that can say you can or you can't, or if I want to go back to Germany, because people do a lot of talking about the Holocaust. When the Semites were told, put on this yellow star because you're not white, and you can't go to the university, and you have to live in the ghetto, and you are going to be removed from your homes, that is power. It's not just a question of somebody saying, I don't like John, I don't like Betty. When you have the power to make it impossible for people to live a constructive existence, then that's the difference.
But what we're trying to figure out is why we want that power to do that to another person in the first place.
I said
and you're saying white people do it to people of
white
color
genetic survival.
because they feel,
I think it's a matter of economics more than anything else.
Well,
and if you're a fair person, you're a fair person. And if this, I don't care who is my neighbor. If they can afford to be my neighbor, if they are the same economic ability that our family have, then they're fine. They're welcome to be my neighbor.
But wait a minute,
we'll be back. I'll give you a chance in just a moment. You know, we do study everything to death. Everything's studied. I mean, figure it out, we study it. Except racism, either whatever scholarship there may be about it, we seem to be running away from, or we're not attracting, our guest accepted, some of the big academics to this issue. You wanted to say.
I'd like to know why Jimmy the Greek had to be fired from CBS for his opinions about blacks, and she can come on national TV and give her opinions about white, and she's not going to get fired from her job. White people can't talk anymore. She got it, and then everybody kind of gets fired. It's ridiculous. And now he has to go write apologies to all black.
Well, I was just going to, I don't think that you can equate what I'm saying to what he said. I mean, you might, and...
The blacks are moving away from their own...
See, I'm not, let me say this, that I'm not surprised that, you know, what I'm saying might upset people. Now, if you just look, all of the studies that people who say they're white do on black people, the blacks this, and studying the blacks that, and studying this, saying this about blacks, and saying, I mean, the literature is just packed.
But from a behavioral standpoint, I do not think
we have to have an explanation. See, that, the Cress theory, that's one person's idea. I challenge everybody in the audience to write about white supremacy behavior. What is your idea about it? Put your idea out there so that you can explain this very considerable behavior on the planet.
I'm not sure you're going to get the majority of the white community to agree that the majority of the white community is engaging in it.
But wait a minute, let me say this. See, I'm not here complaining about what people who classify themselves as white. I made an analysis. I said that basically I see that people who classify themselves are trying to survive genetically. And I am not saying you cannot do that. But I am going to say what it is, and I really advocate that non-white people on the planet stop expecting for white people to commit genetic suicide.
We are almost out.
Doctor, are you aware that within your own culture you also have racism? In other words, my neighbors moved away from the blacks who were moving in next door to us, and so they wanted to move away in order to give their children a better education. I'm talking about Jersey City, where I am coming
And what's
from.
your point?
Well,
And my point is that you also have racism within your own culture.
What are you saying is the racism?
In other words, blacks do not want to live among blacks. They have their own social order. In other words, if my doctor next door to me is black and he prefers not to live among the culture that's moving in to my neighborhood, this happened. I'm evidence of it. It happened many years ago.
Well, are you saying that let's say if you address people of Irish descent, if they move because they have a higher income, are you saying they're conducting racism against their own people?
Say that about a white.
I think that you're clouding the issue. I think that you're clouding the issue about black and white.
Over here, please. I want to give you more time, and someday I'll be a czar, and I'll have all the time I want.
Yes, I do believe that there is a such thing as racism among black people, but I believe it's in response to white racism. As opposed to, you know, black people just want to go out and get white folks.
If you jump on my bones enough, I'm sooner or later going to call you names, or my kids are going to call you.
It's self-preservation.
Yes.
I believe there's racism everywhere, but I think it's more like you're not used to people, you hang out with your own group, and...
That's true, but why is that? Dr. Welsing is offering here a kind of anthropological theory of racism, which has to do with our fear of, that is to say, white people's fear of their diminishing numbers. We're afraid we'll become extinct. She goes one step further to say that intermarriage scares us because it takes our whiteness away. And if everybody were free without all these terrible prejudices and fears, then it's certainly common sense would allow us to conclude that at some point down the line, no whiteness, that is to say, as we think about it in the West, would be left. And she is saying that deep down in here, unconsciously, we're scared to death of that. And that's why we've got black neighborhoods and white neighborhoods.
I disagree. I think you're scared just because people are different, and if you got to know them, you wouldn't be so scared. I don't think it's because we're afraid of being white.
Just for the moment, putting aside theories, and the good doctor is only a theory, I don't accept it as fact, and generalities, and putting this thing on a one-to-one basis, I turned during the, stop, I turned to this lady of color sitting next to me, and I said to her, I don't know about you, but I have never wanted to be black. I'm perfectly comfortable. I've had this white skin for 70 years, and I'm perfectly comfortable.
She agrees.
Wait a minute.
Agrees. That's not a very
I wouldn't know how to do it differently. And this lady said she felt the same way about the color of her skin. So,
I've never wanted to be white because I've always been happy with my color.
Right. But you haven't denied her thesis. She is saying that you don't want to be black. She knows that. And she's saying something else. She's saying that your interest in not being black is resting somewhere way down in your soul, and it's causing some of us to be scared to death that we might be.
You want to know something, Phil? I never even thought about what this lady brought out today, and having heard
That's what you call subconscious thinking.
And having heard it, to the little bit that I've thought about it, I must say that I totally disagree with her, although she has a background, and I don't.
Okay. All right. Yes. If you're a man, you get to talk.
With all this talk, with all this thing going on, and everything that's been said, I haven't heard one person make mention, especially you, Doctor, about the transition that's been taking place over the past 25 years. Of 20 years ago, who ever heard of a black mayor in the city of Montgomery, Alabama? I have a business in Patterson, New Jersey. Joe Clark, the principal. Yeah. Well, Joe Clark, he's doing a fantastic job. He's black. What about all these other things that are happening? Everything that's going on in television today. When did you see a Bill Cosby show become such a big thing on television? He's black.
I get you. Yes, ma'am.
First of all, I'd like to commend you on your work. I think it's incredible. And also, I'd like to know how you feel about the recent Newsweek article that came out last week.
We're all women. Women...
Wait, Phil, just hold on. That that addresses the basic assumption that we all are from a common ancestor, meaning we all as humans. And Newsweek revealed that this common ancestor was, in fact, a black woman from sub-Saharan Africa. I'd like to know your comment on that, as well as, do you think that this kind of research, which has clearly been substantiated, really will reach a plateau of exposure? Because I don't think white America is ready to accept the fact that they are indeed genetically descended from a black woman.
Well, I have said that for a long time, that the simplest explanation about the arrival of the different colors on the planet is that you start with black. And from black, if black produces a condition of albinism, then you have white. And then if you mix the two, you get all the colors in the middle. Now, white cannot produce black, but black can produce all of the colors on the planet. So I say, since the paleontologists and anthropologists are saying human life began in Africa and the first ancestors for everybody were black. Now, the very fact that people have trouble with that, you see, says something about the psyche, about what people, after white supremacy has been established, what people end up feeling about color.
I think it's very unusual that a psychiatrist would give a biological reason for racism, because I really feel like racism comes from psychology. And if we took, as you said, all of the genetic pool and mixed it together and did come out with a one world color, I still think people would be racist. They'd find something else to come up with to make people superior to other people.
Wait a minute. I am a medical doctor, and a medical doctor has to include the whole body as well as the functioning of the brain that produces the end product of behavior. Now, people, indeed, and I have said, people could have, one of the things that led me to this paper, I said, now, people could have done foot size. You know, I wear 10B, so everybody who has 10B, but people didn't focus on foot size. If they did focus on foot size, some psychiatrists or behavioral scientists would have to come along and raise the critical question, why? But people settled on color. And so as a behavioral scientist, I just put the question in my brain computer and said, why? Why did they settle on color, and what is the significance of color? And let me just throw this out. A few weeks from now is going to be Valentine's Day. And what are the ladies going to want? Chocolate candy.
Really, that's beginning to sound a little paranoid to me, you know.
Well, yeah. Why? Let me ask you this. I'll tell you, who asked this question on my show?
Why do white people say chocolate is erotic?
Why is chocolate cake devil's food cake and white cake is angel food cake? Muhammad Ali asked that question on this program. And we'll be back in just a moment. Yeah.
Assuming for a moment that your theory is correct, what steps do you recommend to eradicate racism?
Well, I would like the people who classify themselves as white to really get in love with their own color and the fact of the reality that... Wait a minute.
They're angry that you suggest they aren't.
Well, wait a minute. You see, the proof of behavior is in what you do, not always what you say. But if not that, I advocate that people, black people, non-white people, begin to look at it like a chessboard and understand that if people who classify themselves as white are playing for white genetic survival, then they cannot do the things that black people expect them to do, like help across the board. And that black people are going to have to get accustomed to playing the black side of the chessboard. It's not about hate. Right. See, when you sit down to play chess, you don't hate your opponent. You just know that the white side of the chessboard that always moves first, you see, is playing offense, defense, and the black side has to play defense, offense. And that the anticipation is that the white king is going to be trying to what? Checkmate the black king.
Excuse me. Let me just get a couple of other your observations. First of all, William Raspberry had, I thought, a very insightful article about you. He talked about lap time. That's a big thing with you. Children who are babies, infants, who don't get the, hi, we're glad you're here, tactile kind of. You told Essence magazine, among other things, we cannot wage struggle if the people are weak. You're talking about blacks now. No black female should have children before the age of 30, and no black man should become a father before the age of 35. Before child rearing, we should be going to school, going to the library, educating ourselves. We must create mature, mentally developed parents. Then we will be able to produce children with self-respect and a high level of functioning pattern. Now, wait a minute. Before this white audience gets too goo-goo gaga over this, the point ought to be made that it wouldn't be bad advice for not a few young white folks to keep in mind.
Let me say this, Phil. Wait a minute. Phil,
Adequately spacing the children builds a whole-centered child who has gotten special attention. You do not, a family should consist of no more than 2 children, no closer than 3 years apart. The 3 years give you a chance to...
Phil, please, let me just say this, that I'm talking about all of the horrendous problems. If you advocate, everybody in here white, read the Urban League report about what is happening to black families, okay? So I'm trying to help black families that are in the midst of the white supremacy dynamic get off of the dependency kick, because I don't see the white supremacy changing. But if black people understand that and follow those regulations that I have set up, you see, no children until 30, no father until 35, no more than 2, so that people can actually take care of their own children.
Okay. Are you there, caller? I'm glad you waited. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm a white female engaged to a black man, and anybody out there who says that there is no prejudice in this country is wrong, because I deal with it every day. I personally get called names. I get called nigger lover, all kinds of things, just by stepping out of the house with my fiance.
And your point is?
My point, what I'm trying to say is, everybody that I talk to that is black, every one of my fiance's friends, tell me they don't have anything against me. They don't have anything against any white person that is nice to them. I have never talked to a black person or anybody of any other race, really, that has ever said, I hate whites. I hate whites. I don't get prejudiced. I don't get, discriminated against by his black friends, but I get discriminated against by other white people, and he gets discriminated. I'll tell you, black people in this country have more respect from me than anybody in this whole entire country, because I know what they deal with. A white person, unless you are dating or are closely involved with a black person, don't have any idea what black people go through in this country. They have no idea what it's like.
I thank you for your contribution. You will forgive me for taking leave, and we wish you and your fiancé a long and happy life. I am glad you called. Thanks. Hi, I'm glad you called, too. Go ahead.
Yes, Dr. Welsing and Mr. Donahue, I am a black medical student from Massachusetts, and I was a little put off by Dr. Welsing's comment that it seems as if white supremacy is going to take over our life, so forth. But what has happened to me is I have taken control of my own life. I've always grown up in a middle-class society. I've never been in the ghetto, and I don't have any problems relating to other black people or to white people. Right. But I realize that I am the one who's in charge of my life. Right. I make those decisions.
Do you believe race?
Nobody is going to... No, being black is not going to stop me from succeeding. And I haven't had any problems with white people telling me you can't succeed. So I don't think that being black is an excuse for anything. And I also, as a black person, I have never tried to be white, which was indicated earlier. Those are all the comments that I wanted to make.
Well, I'm not saying that. Let me just say this. That, I'm sorry. The racism is there, and my grandfather was a physician. My father's a physician. I'm a physician. Black people can do many things in the presence of racism, but I don't think that we should deny that it's here.
And we'll be back in a moment. Yes, ma'am.
There's a lot of validity to your comments on integration, but I think you lose me and a lot of white people when you bring up billiard balls, chocolates, and I want roses.
You want to stand? Yeah. Go stand, please.
I think it's dangerous to only address white discrimination and white prejudice without also looking at black prejudice and black discrimination against white people.
I feel your report is somewhat outdated. I think people have changed a lot since 20 years ago.
Racism's kind of going away, is it?
Well, not totally, but somewhat, yes.
Yes.
Phil, I'd like to address my comment to this lady over here in the white who
Yes,
just
ma'am.
said on national television that she's a racist. God help you, my dear, because
no,
more and more people in the world are going to start looking like me. People are going to have more color. If you don't learn to accept me for my beauty...
Yes, but if we don't learn to accept what may be there in ourselves, we can't fix it either.
I accept
So please
it,
don't
Phil.
punish her for her honesty.
Phil, what she said was a blatantly racist statement. The woman
She corrected it
admitted
at herself.
that she is a racist. I take offense in that.
Admit it.
People are not racist.
They are. That's my opinion.
Well, that is the people that you are surrounded by, and
you are too.
You what?
I feel you are too, but you're just not admitting it.
Miss, I have absolutely no racism or anything towards you. I feel no remorse. I'm asking the good Lord to help you see my beauty and inner being.
I think New Yorkers are very open-minded.
Well, New Yorkers are.
Yes. I don't know any other.
Briefly.
If my white neighbor does something to me to dislike them, I'm not called prejudiced, but if my black neighbor does the same thing to me, they're standing there going prejudiced.
I was also offended by the old lady saying that she was a racist. But I feel that we cannot go forward as a society unless we love one another, unless we get along.
Yes. And we can't go forward unless, racism is a lot like cancer. You don't always know you have it. And discovering that it might be there, I don't want to make this about this woman, but if you're going to punish this woman's honesty, then we're going to get nowhere.
But she did offend me, and I'm sure she offended a lot of other people.
I don't think that it's racist. I don't think that anyone is being racist here. I think that the problem is that... Oh, God, excuse
Over here,
me.
George, yes.
I think that they're making too much of a problem out of racist. I think that if I had a white neighbor who was low class, not up to the standards where we're living, we'd be just as angry.
Yeah, what?
I just had a little problem with her earlier comments about Mr. White living next door to Mr. Black and exchanging salutations in the morning.
Dr. Frances Welsing, yes.
Before, you said that white people wear makeup to bring out their color. Then how come you're wearing makeup? Because you don't like your color?
Are you wearing makeup?
Yes, I have makeup on, but I think that you do have to acknowledge that the whole sun tanning industry and the makeup is because it is white people who are saying that they don't like their color. In Africa, people had all different color, makeup on. You see, but they were not saying they didn't like black.
Over here, Doctor.
Excuse me, earlier in the show, when Phil said, is there racism, the audience was very quiet, and he said, come on, we know it's there. When the woman gets up and admits that she's a racist, so you're damned if you do.
Provided and promotional fees paid by the father.
Now, Dr. Cress Welsing was an influential psychiatrist known for her analysis of racism, where she held strong views against the idea of black people forgiving white oppressors. Her perspective is primarily encapsulated in her work, particularly through her Cress theory of color confrontation and racism. According to Welsing, racism is not just an individual act, but a systemic power structure designed to ensure white genetics survive and dominate over non-white populations. Welsing argued that forgiving whites for acts of racism could be seen as a mental illness on the part of black people because, in her view, it involved accepting and thus perpetuating the very system that seeks to oppress them. She believed that such forgiveness could be interpreted as a form of psychological capitulation, where black individuals might subconsciously acknowledge the subjugation or inferiority, thereby reinforcing the power dynamic of white supremacy. In this context, forgiveness isn't just an act of letting go of past grievances, but is perceived as a strategic error that dilutes the will to resist ongoing forms of racial oppression. She posited that this act of forgiveness might stem from a combination of internalized oppression, where black individuals might have been conditioned through centuries of systemic racism to believe in their own inferiority or the inevitability of white dominance. Furthermore, Welsing suggests that the psychological trauma inflicted by racism could lead to a Stockholm Syndrome-like response where victims empathize with or forgive their oppressors to cope with their situations. Welsing's approach was not just about refusing forgiveness. It was a call for black people to understand the depth and mechanism of racism to counteract it actively. She advocated for education, self-respect, and collective action against the structure of white supremacy, rather than individual acts of forgiveness, which she saw as potentially undermining these efforts. Her theories are often discussed in the context of the need for black empowerment and resistance rather than passive acceptance in the status quo. This stance has been both celebrated for its boldness and critiqued for its absoluteness, with some seeing it as promoting division rather than reconciliation. However, her core message was about awakening a consciousness that fights for equality and justice, not through forgiveness, but through understanding and dismantling the systems that perpetuate racial inequality. I think that is an effective summary of what Dr. Cress Welsing has had during her life when she was alive. Tell me down in the comment section what you think about this perspective. And if you're watching us for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like this video, and also share. Thank you, and may the good Lord bless you. Goodbye.